Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Welcome to an online session of your social science children. We have been seeing about the history lesson, new empires and kingdoms in our previous sessions. So in that we have seen about the Gupta Empire. We have seen about 5 kings, right? There were 5 kings in Gupta Empire. We have seen that. Especially we have also seen that Gupta Empire was first found by Sri Gupta. Then his grandson just took the kingdom to the next level. So he was Chandragupta I. Then his son came Samudragupta, and after that Chandragupta II. So he was also called as Vikramaditya, and after him came his son Kumaragupta, and finally Skandagupta, who was the last ruler of Gupta dynasty. We have seen all these things. So now we are going to see how was the administrative system during this Gupta Empire, right? So the administration during Gupta Empire. Unlike the Mauryan Empire, the Gupta Empire was decentralized. So during the Mauryan Empire, especially during the rule of Ashoka, we have seen that the entire country was under one head. Ashoka was taking care of the entire empire, right? But now what happened? The Gupta Empire, all these were decentralized. Decentralized means the kingdoms, small kingdoms which were under the control of Gupta, they let them free to have their own kingdoms, right? So everything, not a central power was there. Every small state had their own king. So here this means that the power was not concentrated in the hands of the king at the center alone. Okay, so power was not concentrated. So the king who was ruling at the center, only him did not have the power. The power was given to the small kings also. It was distributed among the various officials who held a lot of power. So the kingdom's power was distributed among the officials. We have seen that the kingdoms were it was divided into various parts, right? The same way the power was also divided to various officials during this Gupta period. And the chief minister, so they had a chief minister and he was called as Mantri. Okay, so he headed the administration. So he took care of the overall administration, and then there was a commander in chief. So where will we have this commander in chief? Usually this person will be in army. So this commander in chief is the head of army, and he was called as Mahabaladikarta, right? Mahabaladikarta. Then the empire was divided into units called as Bhuktis, which were placed under an Uparika. Uparika was the chief head, chief part, and under that it was divided into various parts, and that was called as Bhuktis. And after that the Bhuktis were further divided into districts. So we are seeing this repeatedly. There was a center, and from there the provinces were divided, and from provinces they had districts, and from districts they had villages. So this is how the division was there from the king's period. From the Mauryan Empire itself it was like that only. So here these Bhuktis were divided into districts, and those districts were called as Vishayas. Okay, and the head of this Vishayas was called as Vishayapati. Okay, so they were called as, the Bhuktis were divided into districts and they were called as Vishayas, and they were under the control of Vishayapatis. At times the Vishayas were subdivided into Vidhis, and after that subdivided into villages. Okay, so this Vishaya was again divided into Vidhis, and then it was divided into villages, right? So there was a head for every village, right? So the village headman was an important figure who managed the affairs with the help of the village elders. So with the help of the elders in the village, they managed all the affairs of the village, and that person was the head of the village. The king appointed a group of officers to help the Uparika. So Uparika, we have seen that that is the largest division, right? So from the kingdom that comes first. So on that case, they require lot of officials to administer all these Vishayas, Vidis, districts, yes, Bhuktis, all these has to be administrated from this Uparika level. So many officials were there to help this Uparika. Okay, so they were called as Kumara Mathyas. So the officials who helped these Uparikas were called as Kumara Mathyas. Then they were the most important officers in the Gupta period, and they served as a link between the central and the provincial administration. Province means the various divisions that was made. Okay, so these Kumara Mathyas, they were the link between the central and the provinces. Okay, so they acted in between. Then while they were mostly paid in cash, so everyone who works for a king, they should be paid, no, they will get a salary, right? So these people, they were usually paid in cash, and at times many Kumara Mathyas, they were receiving land grants. Okay, so a lot of them were also paid through land grants, which means instead of giving cash, a particular plot of land was given to them as their salary. And artisans and bankers organized guilds of their own. So artisans are the people who were occupied in various activities of business, like carpenter, ironsmith, blacksmith, all these people, goldsmith, everyone comes under this artisans. So then, and the bankers, the people who were dealing with cash, all these people had their own guilds. Guilds means associations. Right? So these people had association on their own. Then that is all about the administration of Gupta period. So we have seen how the kingdom was divided into Uparikas, and from Uparikas we have seen the various districts which were called as Bhuktis. Bhuktis were divided into districts, right, which were called as Vishayas, and Vishayas were divided into Vidis. Vidis were divided into villages. We have seen all this, and then the officials, all the Uparikas were helped by the officials called as Kumara Mathyas. Like this we have seen the entire administrative system. So here I am repeating again, of course it was one kingdom, but there were various officials to manage the affairs of the kingdom, right? So now we are going to see about the cultural achievements under the Gupta. So what are all the cultural achievements during this period? That is what we are going to see now. So under the Gupta rulers, most of the India came into unified under one emperor. So as I said, one kingdom, one ruler, but it was divided, that's it. Okay, so almost all the parts of India was united under one empire, one ruler, everything was under the control of Guptas. So on that case, there was peace throughout the country. So there was no one against this Gupta king, there was no one to fight against him. So without wars and warfares, the kingdom was peaceful. Okay, so on that case what happened? People were able to concentrate more on the cultural activities. Okay, so there was peace throughout the empire, and this encouraged the flourishing of various cultural activities. So just because people were not having any other problems, right, any other issues, they were able to concentrate on the cultural activities of in India. So the Gupta rulers were great patrons of art, literature and science. So patrons means the people who admire a particular thing, they also encourage the same. Okay, so these Gupta empire rulers were admiring these art, literature and science, and they also encouraged these activities. Okay, admire or encourage. They even appreciated those who did all these. Right? And Sanskrit was their court language. Court language is the language spoken within the court of the king. Okay, so Sanskrit was their court language. And then one of the greatest Sanskrit poets, so a very famous poet, when we talk about history, we will never forget about this person. Okay, so one of the most famous Sanskrit poet who lived during this Gupta period was Kalidasa, right? So this Kalidasa had given us many literary works to us which are treasured even today. So some of his well-known works are Abhignana Shakuntalam and Meghadutam. So these two are explicit or very intricate works of Kalidasa. The Ajanta cave paintings were also created during this period. This cave painting is there in India even today. And then the sculpture and architecture reached new heights. So sculpture, making sculptures, the architectures, all these were there in previous kingdoms also. But that went to another level during this Gupta period. And then the famous mathematician who lived during this period was Aryabhatta, right? So again, until Max is there, Aryabhatta will live. Yes, because Aryabhatta invented zero. First thing, he invented zero in the subject of mathematics. And one more thing, he was the one who found pi. The value of pi is 3.1416, which means this you will be studying when you are seeing about the area of circle. When it is about a circular surface, you will read about this pi. So these two important values in mathematics was invented by this Aryabhatta. Then, so thus for all these reasons, all these beautiful cave paintings, all these sculptures, architectural works, then the Kalidasa's literature works. So all these, because of all these reasons, Gupta period is often known as Golden Age. Do you remember this picture? When we started with this lesson, I told you that you will get the answer for this question before the end of this chapter. Yes, so this is why we call this Gupta period as the Golden Age of India. Now we are going to see about Harshavardhana. So he was the king who came up after the decline of Gupta Empire, right? So Harshavardhana was the last great Hindu emperor also. Okay. So with the decline of Guptas, the empire disintegrated into several small kingdoms and republics. So after the decline of Gupta Empire, the entire empire started to disintegrate. Disintegrated means divided. Okay, so the empire started to divide into many small kingdoms, and at this time what happened? A young boy of about 16 years of age, a very small boy of 16 years of age, he became the king of Tanesar and Kanauj, right? So he became the king for these two places, Tanesar and Kanauj. And there came another efficient ruler, and that young boy was Harshavardhana, right? And after ascending to the throne, after he became the king, he started capturing various places. He conquered various places like Bengal, Bihar and Odisha, and he extended his kingdom across the North India, right? So first he started with Tanesar and Kanauj, and from there he started conquering places of Bengal, Odisha, Bihar, all these places. So he was almost extending his empire throughout the North India, and he also wanted to expand the kingdom towards south. Okay, so he wanted to expand his kingdom beyond the river Narmada. But what happened, you know, there was a powerful king who was called as Pulakeshin, and he defeated this Harsha and sent him back. So when this Harsha wanted to occupy the places beyond the river Narmada towards the south, when he wanted to extend his kingdom, this powerful ruler Pulakeshin, he fought against this Harsha, he defeated Harsha and he sent Harsha back. So there are many sources of history through which we know about Harsha. Okay. So first thing about Harsha is Banabhatta, who was a court poet. Okay. He wrote the history of Harsha, which is called as Harsha Charita. Okay. So Banabhatta, the court poet of Harsha, wrote Harsha Charita. So it is a very rich source of information about Harsha's rule and his achievements. So how did Harshavardhana rule? What are all the achievements he made? What are all the wars he took part? How did he succeed in all his battles? So all these stories are given in this Harsha Charita, which was written by Banabhatta, the court poet of Harsha. Okay. So we also get to know about Harsha that he was a gifted writer. He himself was a writer. This Harshavardhana, he himself was a writer and he had written 3 plays in Sanskrit. Plays means dramas. So he had written 3 plays in Sanskrit. One is Ratnavali, the other one is Priyadarshika and the third one is Nagananda. Right. So these 3 plays were written in Sanskrit language by Harshavardhana. And then we have a Chinese pilgrim. Yes, for devotional purpose or for a religious purpose, a person visits a foreign country, we call that person as a pilgrim, and especially with the name of the country. So he was a Chinese pilgrim. Okay. So his name is Xuanzang and he visited India during Harsha's rule. Okay. So his accounts written in the book C.U. Key give us valuable information about this period. So he had written about his travel stories in the book C.U. Key, and from that we get to know more about this Harsha's period, right? So with this we are coming to the end of this session, children. See you soon in the next session with more about Harshavardhana. Thank you. To receive our online lessons, please press the subscribe button and you will receive the latest updates. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.